I will turn the time over to her.
Okay, so as Katie said, I'm going to be making a spicy turkey taco. We don't often like using turkey. We usually prefer ground beef because it has more fat in it. And that fat gives it more flavor. And so it makes it more fun to eat, and it kind of improves that texture a little bit. But since the turkey does have less fat in it, particularly saturated fat, it makes it a little healthier for us. Now, just a note about that fat level though. When I was at the grocery store looking at ground turkeys, I noticed that there are a lot of ground turkey mixes that they've added a lot of fat into there. And so you'll even see some 80-20%, so 20% fat in their turkey. So do check, make sure it's just the ground turkey breast, and then it's going to have very, very little fat in there. So, with making the ground turkey, we can do some things to be able to help give it some more flavor and help keep some of that moisture in there that we don't get since there's not that fat in it. So the first thing that we need to do is we have lots of different spices that we can put into it. You can go and buy your own taco spice mix or something like that, but then you don't get to play around with the flavors like you get to when you make your own. If you like it a little spicier, you can put a bit more cayenne into your mix. If you don't like garlic as much, you can cut the garlic in half. And this way you can play around with your own recipe to find out exactly what you like to be able to have. So in this mix that I have, we have a teaspoon of onion, the chili powder, we've got onion powder, we've got red pepper flakes, we have cumin, we have paprika, and I particularly like using smoked paprika, just gives another flavor profile there. We've got oregano, we've got some salt and pepper, some cinnamon and cloves, just a pinch of those, and then some cayenne pepper. I have quite a bit of this here to help give it a little bit of a kick, but you can tone that down, or you can tone it up if you like a little bit more spice there. So then you just mix that all up, and you have a nice spice mix here. And this recipe makes enough to be for about 2 pounds of meat. So you can have some for later if you're just making the single recipe. So next we will cook up our turkey. You'll notice that when I cook this turkey up, I left it in some pretty big chunks here. The reason for that is twofold. First, the more you break it up as it's cooking, you release more moisture there, and so then it's not as moist in the finished product. So if you're waiting until it's done to then break it up, then you can save some of that moisture. Second, when you have those big chunks, you can actually check the temperature. It's kind of difficult to check the temperature of those tiny little chunks in there. When we're cooking meat, we often talk about cooking until it's brown. But brown doesn't always mean done for meat. Sometimes it can be done without being brown, and sometimes it can be brown without being done. So instead, we want to stick a thermometer in one of those big chunks right there in the middle and get it to 165 degrees. For turkey, it's 165 degrees is our target temperature. And then once it's reached that, then we can know it's done, and we're not going to overcook it any more so we don't end up with a really dry piece of meat. And we are also not going to undercook it, so we're not going to risk getting salmonella or some other bacteria. So then once it's done, you can just break it up into smaller, bite-sized, more manageable pieces so that you can be able to eat that up in your taco. Once it is cooked, you will add your spice in to there and mix that all up. also, earlier, I sauteed some red onions and garlic. And just until the onions were nice and translucent. And you can put that in as well. And you can also put in some canned tomatoes. When you are buying canned tomatoes, or really any vegetables or beans, you want to be able to look for the canned vegetables that have no salt added. The salt, they often add a lot of salt into it, and this way you can control how much salt you're putting into your final dish and not get so much extra sodium. So we mix that all up, and we would let that simmer on the stove for a little while, just warming up those tomatoes. If you can't find the canned tomatoes without the low salt or no salt, or if you accidentally pick some up that was the regular salt, go ahead and dump your whatever vegetables that you got into a strainer and rinse that off. You'll get at least some of that salt off, so you're not putting as much salt into your dish. So next, we have our tortillas. There are two different kinds of tortillas that we can have. We can either have flour tortillas or we can have corn tortillas. The flour tortillas and corn tortillas both have pros and cons, depending on what use you're going to have for them. Corn tortillas are a lot higher in fiber, and they don't have as high of calories. But they tend to break apart on us when we put it together in a taco. The flour tortilla, while it does have more calories to it, it stands up. You can even put in all sorts of wet stuff in there, and it's going to stay together. So you're simply going to stick them onto your griddle and let them warm up a little bit, just until they're just barely warm so you can move them a little bit more. Just flip them once so they can get warm there on both sides. If you like that char on it, you can cook it a little bit longer to give it a little bit of charring. But all you really need to do is just cook it until it's soft enough to be able to use. So then we can assemble our taco. You just take the taco, put on a bit of meat and the tomatoes there. And then we have some pico de gallo, which is really a chunky salsa. You can make your own pico de gallo, or you can buy it from the store. It's fairly simple to make. It's just tomatoes, onions, cilantro, have a bit of lime juice there. And then you can put in some cheese. You can really use any kind of cheese. Here I have queso fresco, which is just a fresh mozzarella that you crumble there on top. And then you can drizzle this is Mexican cream, just really just like a heavy cream. You can use sour cream instead and just drizzle that there on top, and you end up with a lovely taco to enjoy. Are there any questions?
Can you use like leftover turkey dinner?
Yeah.
Make it?
Yeah, you definitely can. I mean, you can have it in chunks if you don't have any way of grinding that up and just have more of a chunky taco. Yeah, you definitely can. Any others? Okay, thank you.